Tonight, the US's intention to broker peace between two of its close allies, and senior officials from world's intelligence agencies come together for a meeting for some known and unknown agendas. We cover stories about German crackdown on ISIS supporters, clampdown on Chinese police stations in Canada, Saudi's decision on oil production, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Catherine Bullock. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the National Day Against Gun Violence serves as a reminder of the lives lost and of the collective responsibility of Canadians to do everything they can to prevent these senseless tragedies. These comments come as Canada marked last Friday its first ever National Day Against Gun Violence. Trudeau says increased criminal firearms use is a, quote, real and serious threat to Canadians. So the government has introduced several measures to address this. These include tougher gun legislation and penalties and a freeze on the sale, purchase and transfer of handguns. It has also cracked down on gun smugglers bringing firearms into Canada from the US. Statistics Canada reports that there have been an average of 1,300 deaths over the past 25 years due to gun violence. That's around 52 deaths a year. National statistics show 1 in 3 homicides is attributable to guns. Since last September to date, a record number of 10 police officers were killed in the line of duty, 9 of which were murdered. In the latest Canada-China shaky relations, police in Canada say they have shut down so-called Chinese police stations that serve as bases to intimidate Chinese Canadians. The RCMP says the stations had been operating in the provinces of British Columbia, Quebec, and Ontario. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's National Security and Intelligence Advisor told a committee of Canadian lawmakers that a variety of tactics were used to shutter the police stations. He said the RCMP used different tools to shut down the police stations, reduce their impact, and reduce their credibility. He said there is an ongoing investigation that might lead to arrests. The number of stations have not been disclosed, but last October it was reported that there were at least 2 in Montreal and 3 in Toronto. There were also reports of at least 1 station in Vancouver. Officials said the stations are used to monitor and coerce Chinese Canadians to do their bidding, such as returning to China to face prosecution for alleged crimes. In some cases, relatives back in China are threatened with punishment. The Chinese embassy in Canada denies the accusations, saying the stations provide assistance for certain things, such as applying for driver's licenses. The US has a real national security interest in Israel and Saudi Arabia normalizing relations. This is what the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said today while addressing the annual American-Israel Public Affairs Committee gathering in Washington. Blinken said the Biden administration believes it can play an integral role in advancing the elusive diplomatic milestone. He said the task cannot be accomplished easily. However, he said the US remains committed to working toward that outcome. Blinken said his upcoming trip this week to Jeddah and Riyadh in Saudi Arabia is a step in that direction. Turning to the Israel-Palestine conflict and long-stalled peace talks to broker a 2-state solution, Blinken said the US is committed to talk with the parties to at least maintain a horizon of hope. Blinken also detailed annual US aid for Israel, putting the total at roughly $5 billion per year, with $1 billion to replenish Israel's Iron Dome missile stocks. He continued to insist that the US will not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. He said if Iran rejects the path of diplomacy, then President Biden will use all options on the table to ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. 5 unnamed sources are saying that over the weekend, nearly 24 senior officials from the world's major intelligence agencies held a secret meeting in Singapore. A media source reports the meeting was held on the fringes of the Shangri-La Dialogue Security Meeting. According to these sources, the meetings are organized by the Singapore government and have been held discreetly at separate venues alongside the Security Summit for several years. The meetings have not been previously reported. The sources also told the media source that intelligence representatives from the US, China, and India were present. No Russian representative was present. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister attended the Shangri-La dialogue, but he did not attend the intelligence meeting. The sources say, considering the large number of countries involved, the meeting is a way of promoting a deeper understanding of intentions. A spokesperson for the Singapore Ministry of Defense said that at the Shangri-La dialogue, participants from intelligence agencies also interacted with each other. The US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand together operate the Five Eyes network to share a broad range of intelligence. However, larger meetings are rare and almost never publicized. The sources say Russia's war in Ukraine and transnational crime were the main agenda of the secret meeting. They say the tone at the meeting was cooperative and not confrontational. US officials said on Friday that the CIA director visited China last month for talks with Chinese counterparts as the Biden administration seeks to boost communications with Beijing. Please stay tuned. We will be back after a short break. The US Air Force is denying reports that it carried out a simulation in which the AI killed its operator. The news comes after the chief of AI test and operations in the US Air Force, Colonel Tucker Hamilton, described an operation with an AI-enabled drone. While speaking at a conference, the colonel said the drone was repeatedly stopped from completing its task of destroying surface-to-air missile sites by its human operator. He said that despite having been trained not to kill the operator, the drone destroyed the communication tower so that the operator could no longer communicate with it. Later, Colonel Hamilton clarified in a statement that the US Air Force had never run that experiment. He said it was a thought experiment rather than anything which had actually taken place. Although not all experts agree, there have been an increasing number of warnings by AI experts about the risks involved with AI. Recently, Professor Yoshua Bengio, one of the 3 computer scientists described as the godfathers of AI, told a media source that the military should not be allowed to have AI powers at all. He said the military is, quote, one of the worst places to put a super intelligent AI. Some military and AI experts say it is more likely this experiment was a planned scenario. More than a dozen Indian students have been protesting for over a week in front of the Canadian Border Agency office on Airport Road in Mississauga. These students have been scammed by agents from their home country, India. They were given forged admission letters to educational institutions here. When they arrived, they found out that the documents were forged, but they are facing deportation orders for having fake documents. Stuck in a limbo, these Indian students chant, "We want justice." Last week, the immigration minister tweeted that the government is committed to supporting victims of fraud. He said the focus of the government is to identify culprits and not penalize the victims. He assured that victims of fraud will get a chance to present evidence to support their cases. But a grassroots advocacy group says even students have shown their forged letters to investigators are still facing deportation. Germany has arrested 4 women and 3 men of suspicion of helping finance ISIS terrorists in Syria. German police conducted this past Wednesday a series of early morning raids on 19 properties across the country. Searches were carried out in properties in Berlin, Bavaria, Hamburg, Hesse, Thuringia, and Lower Saxony. A coordinated search was also carried out on a building in the Netherlands. German authorities allege that the detained men and women have been acting as financial intermediaries for ISIS terrorists. Those arrested hold German, Turkish, Moroccan, and Kosovan citizenships. They are also accused of breaking export laws. Prosecutors say the arrested individuals transferred at least 65,000 euros to Syria. This is about 93,500 Canadian dollars. They say the money is used to help prisoners escape or be smuggled out of Al-Hol and Roj camps. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces are in charge of both camps. The Organization of Petroleum Export Countries and its allies, also known as the OPEC Plus, has confirmed that Saudi Arabia will cut 1 million barrels of oil per day from next month. In the 35th OPEC meeting held in Austria's capital, Vienna, OPEC Plus endorsed their previous output cut decisions in order to achieve and sustain a stable oil market. The new cuts will be made on top of the existing voluntary cuts of around 1.6 million barrels per day in April. Last October, OPEC Plus agreed to cut their crude oil production by 2 million barrels per day until the end of this year. Later, the group added a further cut of around 1.6 million barrels per day in April, with voluntary cuts of several member countries. Saudi Arabia led the way with 500,000 barrels per day starting in May. The latest voluntary cut of 1 million barrels per day in July will reduce the country's total production by 1.5 million barrels per day until the end of year if extended, bringing its production to 9 million barrels per day. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Sound Vision, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.